is set. Is it still recording?
Yes.
Yeah, we just had to fix something with that.
Okay, that's making an assumption that we don't have a lot of waste. Okay. When you are casting, please cast 2 or 3 people at the same time. Okay. Preferably, you have like 5 people, and you're planning on just casting 2, and the leftover goes from one person to the other person. Does that make sense? And then you make another cast, hoping that you only use 1 or 2, and then the third one gets a little extra, right? Does that make sense? So that will reduce waste. In this exercise, I am not making you calculate how much water and how much investment is necessary to make it. For your next section, that will be pure number.
Nice.
Oh, what do you break?
I'm sorry about that. Okay. So, for now, guess what? There's one less calculation you have to do. Good. Now, I want you to go ahead and get the water before the prep period starts, because the water is really cold. And if you let it sit in the classroom for a few minutes, hopefully it brings it up by 5 degrees, which will make it a little bit bearable. Okay? Good. Now, I'm going to go ahead and open up this container. This is where all of your stuff will be. This is the mixing bowl that we're going to be using. Can you grab from the yellow cabinet a small bottle of WD-40? Guys, clean up later. I'll clean up later. We're trying to record this. I don't want that extra sound. Yes. I'm not going to do this again. This is a one-time. Okay, guys, you do know that I'm not going to repeat this, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you this once. Just once. Okay, back here, I have the vacuum pump. Make sure it goes back to the vacuum pump when you're done. Or the vacuum pump goes back where it belongs when you're done. The vacuum pump in the front has an indicator. This indicator shows me whether or not the oil is full or low. Okay, check to see that it's not low. If you run it while it's dry, this will break. I will not replace it. Okay? Do you understand? Okay. So, for right now, that's a big bummer. For your silver casting, you're actually going to have to remake a new machine if you break this. Does that make sense? Okay? Now, I went ahead and cleaned this last period. Make sure that it still is clean every single time. If it is not clean, you need to tell me right away, and I will dock points for the students who have not cleaned it prior to you. I also have to have a list of who worked on it in every single day. Okay? Now these two attach each other very easily. This little part right here, righty-tighty, makes it so that the air doesn't escape. I flip this over. This is only a compression fitting. It's nothing special. Okay? I flip that back over. Make sure that this is not kinked, that it's straight. Okay? Make sure that your switch is off position prior to plugging it in. If you plug it in and if it's on, this switch is really old. There's a slight possibility that it will kind of arc at you. It's not dangerous, it's just scary. So. And if it does arc at you, I'll go ahead and replace the whole switch. It's not a big deal, it's just I don't have one this second. So. Okay, good. So I have everything set. This is locked. this is visible. This is gonna go on the top. I take some of the WD-40 and go around it. That helps it keep a very nice suction. Okay. Now at this time I'm going to go ahead and start mixing. When you're mixing wet and dry material, what goes first?
Dry.
So disappointing.
We had a 50.
Guys, I'm going to make just a little bit extra. Not too much, just a little extra. Do we have that roller? Now they gave me this ruler, that's fine. The ruler doesn't start for about 5 millimeters. Okay. See how the 0 isn't all the way at the end? So I'm going to mark 15 millimeters on the side of 3 sides of each of these. And the reason why I do 3 sides of each of them is because when I'm pouring in the plaster, sometimes it splashes and I don't see my mark. Okay? That makes it easy, right? So let me get a mechanical pencil. I'm going to go ahead and mark right here. 15 millimeters. 15 millimeters. I did grade all these, right? Once it's submerged, I can't really grade it. We have to start over. I just marked 3 sides. I could do 4. Just do them.
Is it 15 on every ruler or just that one? Because it's.
Every ruler is different.
So.
Just figure out what you're supposed to do. Be smart.
Maybe get like the second roller and then measure how much extra there is on that roller.
Or even better, why don't you make your own ruler that's a plunger, right? But like, when you put it all the way to the bottom, it only shows you 20. Inside the flame market, I have a little sprayer of air. Can you grab that for me?
So isn't the plaster part supposed to be a centimeter?
So I did 2 centimeters
Okay.
from the bottom to the top. You have a centimeter all around it, and you should have 1 centimeter height of just plaster.
Okay.
Right? Okay. Now I'm going to go through really quickly with the air, just in case you have some dust that got into there.
Got dust that sucker off.
I just did that. Didn't do very much. Okay. I'm about to start mixing my plaster.
Do you need some type of mold release so that they can come apart or that?
No. The plaster is water-based, and the plasticine is oil-based.
Yeah, but what
So they
about
repel
this?
each other very well.
Really judging so hard.
Good question.
You look over your shoulder.
Hey guys, we're recording this. Good question. The sides do have some porosity, right? That could cause problems. I don't think it'll be that bad of a problem, but then again, if you want to do some extra work, put some like Vaseline on it, or yes.
What's porosity?
Porosity is porousness, like porousness. So sand, let's sandstone is extremely porous, right? Has a lot of porosity. Marble is less porous, right? Does that make sense? Good. Now at this time, I want all 4 of you to put on your masks since you're up close to where I'm working. I'm going to go ahead and grab a little bit of plaster.
The metal goes on top. I can't read.
That's probably
This is why Juan was wearing it in class.
Can somebody move all these backpacks away from me, please? Now, as I put the plaster in, I go very slowly. It turns out that the way that I'm doing it right now is much more aggressive than the way that I did in high school. And the reason is, in high school, I didn't have these fancy tools. So when I was pouring the plaster into my container, I would always let it go between my fingers like this, okay? Making really sure that there were no clumps, right? Specifically clumps of hardened plaster because my plaster sat around too long, right? So that's the way I did it. Now that I'm in college, or now that I bought all these extra toys, I'm much more aggressive, right? So I do stuff like this, and I kind of pour it in. You're gonna get a see, and I'll record this separately, I think, where you take the plaster, and when you pour it in, it kind of sits on top, and then it slowly loses its bubbles and drops to the bottom. Okay? So I'm doing that.
How do we know how much plaster?
I will show you. It actually stops absorbing, and that's when you know you did a good job. Okay. So right now, if you four want to stand up, there's a small little island on the top. Do you see that island? Okay. That's pretty close. Okay. Not quite there, but pretty close. When you guys are doing the silver casting, the water and the investment is you have to measure it by weight, by volume and then by weight, okay? So there's not a lot of like guesswork. You can kind of see there's probably about 1 more centimeter of material to go through before it will start making an island. That's what I want. Okay, so if you guys want to stand up and just kind of take a quick look at that, that's what I want.
Like reading my eyes.
Oh no.
And I'll make a video for everybody
You know
else.
what? Now I can't do it.
Okay. At this stage, when I was in college, I would mix everything by hand very slowly. Now that I'm not in college, I use this. The problem with using this is, that it increases air bubbles, right?
And that's what you want?
I don't want any air bubbles, right? So, now that I increase air bubbles in this, I have to go through a second process to get all the air bubbles out. And as I do this, I make sure that I really scrape the edges. You can tell that I spent a lot of money at the Goodwill, purchasing a very nice one, right?
It's a good Well, those bits of dry plaster that came there when you were pouring the plaster back in?
No, okay. Good. Now I'm going to take this, put the bell jar on top, turn it on. So as I get in, it's already at minus 10 psi. Air is getting pumped out of here and into here, and it's coming out.
Sounds like that guy.
Now, You can start to see right now, the top of this is starting to boil, it's starting to bubble. All the bubbles are rising to the top. Okay. I'm gonna reach about 25 psi, minus psi, or whatever it's called. And then once it hits 25 psi, it collapses on top of itself for some reason. I don't know why. And that's pretty much the viscosity that I need. Okay.
How could it possibly reach minus 25 psi when the atmosphere is like 15 psi?
Because it's pulling the air out of here.
No, but wouldn't it be only able to reach like minus 15 psi? That's what the atmosphere is until
I don't know, that's what this says. I'm not a scientist, I just know how to make my artwork work. So you can see right now, it's all bubbly on top, right? It's bubbling, it's boiling.
Excuse me, you're blocking the
And that's it. All of a sudden, everything collapsed.
can't film the movie, lady, if you're in the way.
I'm in the way.
I can't film the movie if you're standing. Thank you.
Now, for the sake of...
And scene.
There's the bubbles disappear. Okay, for the sake
And
of art, this is good. I'm sorry, for the sake of this process, it's good. For when you're doing the silver casting, there's, I believe, 3 times you have to do this. And it's like, what I did right here was 2 minutes, by the way. But what you do for yours, by the way, guys, I didn't time it, but do it for 2 minutes, okay? Not for longer. If you go for longer, it will start making problems. Now, I'm going to go ahead and start pouring now. And when I pour, I'm going to choose one corner, and I'm going to go across to the other side, okay? There are two schools of thought. One school of thought says, do it in the center. And the other school of thought says, do it on the side. I have found that doing it on the side creates less air bubbles than doing it in the center. So for the sake of my class and for my testing, you're going to do it my way. For the sake of the rest of your life, once you graduate from TCP, each way is correct. I'm not saying that I'm the only one, right? Grab me 2 hammers, please.
Are you allowed to touch this stuff with your fingers?
I don't. That didn't answer your question. I don't.
I mean, it's just plaster of Paris, so it's probably fine, but not to.
So it's okay, like, to grab this, like this, that's fine. But I don't like to put my hand inside there.
Well, I just meant
Put this on top of that right there.
oh my gosh.
Put it on top of the stool. This on top of that stool.
Yeah.
I did it. I am filling it up to the top of the line, which is 20 millimeters from the very bottom. Okay. I like these stools, especially ones that are missing some screws because they bounce nicely. And I go ahead and do this. My goals, I have 2 reasons for hammering. One is to get the top as flat as possible and make your display much easier to do. The second reason is there are air bubbles there, right? And I want those air bubbles to be away from that surface. So by hammering, hopefully that's causing liquefaction and the water, the air bubbles, will release from the surface and then go, the surface of your plasticine and go to the top. That's my goal. Good. Put this to the side. Do that for the other one. luckily I could read music and match pitch, so they put me in choir instead. Okay, this is half of the problem. Okay, now you need to spend a lot of time cleaning up. Okay, the problem is that any of these like little plaster bits that are hard, if they work their way back into another cast, they can cause a lot of distortions. Okay, so now you're going to spend the rest of the period putting everything back, right? So I'm going to unplug this. This looks fairly clean. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to like be like oil-less or anything, but it does have to be void of any kind of plaster, because that plaster can crack off and get back into somebody else's hand or whatever, right? So I go through, just wipe off just the loose plaster, right? A little bit of plaster on there, wipe that off. This is just compression fitting, right? Unscrew that. Double check everything. If you're mixing and somehow it pours all over this place, you're gonna wipe it down and it's gonna look beautiful. And then it dries and then it's gonna look like you messed up, right? So make sure that you clean it thoroughly, right? And then set it back into this container here. Same thing with your bell jar. Make sure that there's not plaster all over the place. Wipe it down. That away. This right here, just a white spot right there, it looks like. Another spot right here, that looks good. This is going to be stored on the bottom to the left of F. Okay? Can you put that away near F?
F? Okay.
F on the bottom.
It says F locked or?
Oh, just on the floor, next to F. Okay? By the way, that mask that I picked up, there's a YouTuber that I like. She recommended it, and I have to say it's so much better. Know your masks, though. Those that I'm giving you right now are particle masks. If you're trying to do like, you guys know everything you're saying got recorded, right? This whole period.
Yes.
Okay. I'm not gonna have to like re-record it, right?
I don't think so.
I hope not.
Shouldn't.
'Cause I'll be judged.
I mean, you could just yeah.
Okay. Now, the plaster is not a danger unless it's in the air form, right? As long as it's wet, we're safe, right?
Yes.
Okay. That's why I'm wiping everything down. Cleaning everything off. I'm waiting on cleaning this for just a second. This is 20-minute plaster. When I purchased 20-minute plaster before, it usually sets up in about an hour. This stuff right here has been my best experience with plaster of Paris in I'd say 8 years. Usually I have to buy it from Marjan from Phoenix, and I get a good quality product. But I don't know what they're doing differently, but this actually works nicely. So yeah, kudos to, I think I got it from Lowe's this time. Usually I go to Home Depot, but whoever has it, right? I'm gonna go through here. Now it's gonna look nice and clean, but it's all white streaks right now. It's just that the wet doesn't show that.
It's like when they were doing alabaster.
Just like
Nice,
alabaster.
and then the streaky white.
And you're like, but I did a wonderful job, right? So, make sure that you get your towel really, really wet and then squeegee it out a lot. Each time you do that, you're increasing the amount of dirt in the bucket and decreasing it in your rag. Now, we need to make sure that we wipe this down. You saw I wiped it down very easily, very quickly earlier. This time I'm going to do a much better job. Please don't drop this. It only cost me $3. And I like to think that this $3 will last for a crazy amount of time. Because let's face it, like when it breaks and I go to the Goodwill and I need to buy one and they only have one, it's going to be like $20, right? But I just want the junk one. This doesn't even work all the time properly. Like, I don't care. It just does what I need it to do. So wipe everything down. I know I'm being like way too, like, you guys don't need this lesson, right? You can do it without me doing this lesson. I'm being very like methodical because I want you to make sure that you do everything correctly, right? And let's face it, like if it's one student working and you make a little bit of a mess, it's not a big deal. Unfortunately, there's 62 of you. And 62 of you making a slight mess every single time will make me have a heart attack, right? Okay, for these, they come out relatively clean except for two spots, right here and right here. So just spend a little bit of extra time in that spot. If you really can't get it out, let's say it got too hard too quickly, come to me. I have some wire brushes. I have some old toothbrushes that are specifically for cleaning just this type of thing, okay? One, the other one's still here. Two. Incidentally, this water is still pretty cold, so be aware of that. And how many times am I going to explain how to do this? How many more times?
Once next year.
Maybe not. Maybe I'll just show the DVD or the movie, the YouTube video. Okay, so these two are now clean. Sometimes just kind of blow on it to see if there's any like white spots that show up, right? No, this table, it looks like it's clean, but it's not, right? So I'm going to go ahead and get the table one more time. Make sure you use the palm of your hand as you're wiping. The idea is this, guys, and this will be a life lesson for you. If I use this size, I usually go one smaller, but if I use this size, and if I go across, right, I have 3 more clean sides, right? So I just flip it over, 2 more clean sides, right? Right? Obviously this wasn't that dirty, but I just taught you that, so
Wouldn't you have 4
you did
sides?
that. Well, I started with 1, so you have 3, right? Okay, good. Now, in the time that I was taking to clean everything, this is hopefully hardened a little bit. So now I can go in, make sure I don't use the recycling bin, I use the trash bin. I just squeeze, squeeze, and the majority of it just came off, right? Make your job a little easier. Now I go over to here with the rag. I do this process last because now this bucket of water is pretty dirty, right? If I did this process first and then tried to do the tables, then the tables would be pretty dirty, okay? The more plaster you leave on the on the rubber, the more it gets hardened. It gets kind of like chapped lip looking. There's like lots of little micro fractures that go through there. So it's really important that I get all the plaster off. And I see some people do this before, some people do it after. I like to do it after. I think that either way is fine.
Do what?
And the last part that I do, I'm sorry, I didn't tell you yet. The last part that I do is I take a little WD-40 and I kind of spray it all down. Okay? I suppose I want you all to do it as the last thing, so the next group doesn't have to do it. Does that make sense? So when you go in here, you should put your finger through, and if it smells like WD-40, then the person before you rocked. And if not, they get a point knocked off, right? Pretty simple? Now, this is almost done. I just have one more thing that needs to be done, and that's to, well, I guess a few things. Put everything away. I take this, I put this on top of here. This container goes right across left to the left of F on the bottom, and it's just on this little pallet jack. You bring it over there and drop it down there. Okay, it's all out of the way. All these things go into the flammable cabinet, and then I have to mop the floor. Okay, that's the last thing that is part of my responsibility, is mopping the floor. Okay, make sure you get the electronics out. And then I told you guys how to mop the floor. How do you mop the floor? S's. S's. Right? Like this. All the way over, turn all the way back. Okay? I realize that most of you are pretty busy. I want all the white marks to be removed. If there are white streaks afterwards, I'm not bothered with that. Okay? I'll mop it again later and hopefully I can get it. But I want all the white marks to be removed. Does that sound reasonable? And that concludes your responsibility. Your soft deadline for this is this Thursday.